Welcome to First Chapter Friday. I'm Karen from the Sparks Library. Today, in honor of Black History Month, I'm going to read to you from the book titled Elijah of Buxton. It was written by Christopher Paul Curtis and published by Scholastic Incorporated in 2007. To begin, I'm going to read the synopsis to introduce you to the main character. And it begins, 11-year-old Elijah lives in Buxton, Canada, a settlement of runaway slaves near the American border. Buxton is in the western part of the province Ontario, just north of Lake Erie and east of Detroit, Michigan, where the American border is. Elijah's the first child in town to be born free, and he ought to be famous just for that, not to mention for being the best at chunking rocks and catching fish. Unfortunately, all that most people see is a fragile boy who's scared of snakes and tends to talk too much. But everything changes when a former slave steals money from Elijah's friend, who has been saving to buy his family out of captivity in the South. Now it's up to Elijah to track down the thief, and his dangerous journey just might make a hero out of him, if only he can find the courage to get back home. Chapter 1, Snakes and Ma. It was Sunday after church, and all my chores were done. I was sitting on the stoop of our home trying to think what to do. It was that time of day when the birds were getting ready to be quiet, and the toady frogs were starting to get louder with that chirpity sound they make most of the night. I wondered if it would be worth it to go fishing for an hour afore it got dark. I got that question answered when Cooter came walking up the road, waving at me. "Evening, Eli. Evening, Cooter. What you doing, Eli?" "I was thinking about getting old Flapjack and going fishing. You want to come?" I got something that's more interesting than watching you fish. I got a mystery." This might not be so good. I ain't trying to be disrespectful about my best friend, but there are lots of things that Cooter sees as being mysterious that most folks understand real easy. I asked him anyway, "What's the mystery?" "I was cutting through Medea's truck patch and seen some tracks I ain't never seen afore." "What kind of tracks? Were they big?" They're long and wiggly. I followed them, but they disappeared in the grass." Cooter's pretty good at tracking, so maybe this was a mystery after all. Let's go. We got to Cooter's home, opened the gate, and went round back to his mother's truck patch. Cooter was right. There, amongst the rows of his ma's beets and corn and green peas, were some of the strangest markings I'd ever seen. I studied 'em real close. They were long and skinny and in 6 wiggling lines. 2 of 'em were a good bit thicker than the rest. They started on one side of Cooter's ma's truck patch, went clean through her vegetables, then disappeared in the grass. I got on my hands and knees to really give 'em the eye, then told Cooter, "You got me. I ain't never seen such tracks nowhere. Let's ask my pa once he comes out the field." But afore we had the chance to ask Pa, the preacher came walking down the road in front of Cooter's. He ain't a tall like a common preacher that's got a church or nothing, but he tells anyone that will listen that he's the Right Reverend Deacon Dr. Zechariah Connery III, and that he's the most educated, smartest man anywhere around. Instead of saying all those names, me and Cooter just call him the preacher. He leaned on Cooter's fence and called, "Evening, boys." "Evening, sir." "Hot one today. Why aren't you two off swimming?" Cooter said, "We're trying to solve us a mystery, sir." "Really? And what would that be?" I told him, "It's some kind of animal tracks we ain't never seen afore, sir." "Where are they?" The preacher opened the gate, walked into the truck patch, squatted down, and peered at the tracks just as sharp as I'd done. He took a jackknife out of his pocket and dug a little scoop of dirt out of one of the tracks. He looked at it so close that his eyes started to go crossed. I quit breathing and my blood ran cold when all of a sudden he shouted, "Lord have mercy!" The preacher quick stood up and looked all around him, the way you would if someone screamed, "Wolf!" Me and Cooter looked too. Who wouldn't have? The preacher said, like he's talking to himself, "No, no, no. I knew this was going to happen. I just prayed it wouldn't be this soon." Me and Cooter called out together, "What? What was going to happen?" The preacher looked like his best friend just got killed. "I warned them they had to check out those new free folks better. Now somebody's accidentally toted some of those horrible creatures up here." I noticed that instead of folding up his knife, the preacher kept it open. Then worst, he held onto it like he was fixing to stab something. I said, "What somebody tote up here, sir?" "Hoop snakes," he said in a low, hissing way that told you whatever kind of snake this was, you didn't want to run up on one. Cooter's eyes scanned right and left. "What? What's a hoop snake, sir?" Being any kind of snake was enough for me to start getting nervous, but the preacher made matters a whole lot worse when he said, "I suppose I have to tell you, but I don't want this to get any further than the three of us." He used his boot to rub out most of the tracks out of the dirt. I said, "Please, sir, tell us what you mean." The preacher started talking, but he never looked at me direct. He was too busy on the road in the woods. Down home there's a vile breed of snake called a hoop snake. Not only can it outrun a racehorse, it's been known to kill a fully grown bear with one bite. I looked at Cooter and hoped that I weren't looking as scared as him. The preacher went on, "They look like near any other snake except for one thing." "What?" "They have the habit of sticking their tails in their mouths, then biting themselves." "That don't make no sense. That don't make no sense at all. What if the preacher was saying was true? These snakes sure ain't too sharp-minded." I said, "How are they going to bite you if they're clamping down on their own tails, sir?" "Good question, Elijah. But they don't hold their tails when they're ready to bite you. They hold them when they're ready to chase after you." Cooter said, "But—" The preacher held up his left hand. "Listen, and my young brothers, you better listen good. This may save your lives. Once they've bitten their tails, they form the shape of a circle, then stand up like a wheel or a barrel hoop and commence rolling after whatever they've decided to kill." The hairs on the back of my neck started jumping like a skeeter brushed against them. The preacher said, "After they catch you and bite you," he snapped his left hand shut like it was the mouth of one of those hoop snakes, "the true horror begins. You're doomed." Cooter said, "How come?" "Because, Cooter, their poison gets into your blood too quick. Within hours you commence swelling till your skin looks soft and rotten as a ripe peach left in the noonday sun." Cooter said, "What? You swells up?" The preacher said, "You swell up so much that after exactly 7.5 days, the pressure in your body becomes too great and you explode like an overheated steam boiler. In seconds, your stomach and your lungs and your other entrails are flung around you for miles and miles." I couldn't believe folks who'd got free would do this to us, even if it was an accident. But the preacher weren't through. Worse, the swelling affects everything but your head, so you're forced to watch the whole tragedy unwinding right in front of your eyes. Cooter edged close to me and choked out, "Well, sir, at least you dies quick and ain't left to do much suffering." "No such luck, Cooter." The preacher held up 2 fingers. 2 weeks. It's 14 endless days after your explosion before you pass on. And it's no pleasant death either. You finally die from starvation. The preacher throwed his knife into the ground where the tracks used to be and put his hand on the fancy holster and mystery pistol he always totes. "Boys," he whispered, "I need you to solemnly promise me something. I want you both to swear on your mother's lives that if I'm ever bitten by one of these beasts, you'll take this pistol and put a bullet in my brain. I'd rather be shot dead than face such a horrible, prolonged death. Raise your hands. I need each of you to promise that you'll blow my head right off my shoulders." I near jumped to the moon when a loud bang came from behind me. I looked back, and Cooter had already run into his house and slammed and locked the door. He warn't about to promise nothing, for I knowed what was happening. I was through Cooter's gate and right in the middle of a good, long, hard run home. I had sense enough not to take no shortcuts, and stuck to the road so's I could at least see the hoop snake hunting party if I ran up on it. Ma must have heard me screaming from a ways off, 'cause she was running out our front gate by the time I got there. She said, "'Lijah, what on God's earth is wrong now?" I busted through the gate, pulled Ma into the house, and slammed the door behind her. I was too worn out and too shooked up to talk, so she started looking me up and down and spinning me around, trying to figure out what was wrong. After a second she said, "'Lijah, sweetheart, you scaring me to death. What's wrong, baby?" Once my breathing caught up with me, and I let her know about how the runaways from America had accidentally brung hoop snakes up to Buxton, and how they were out in the woods rolling around looking for something to kill. Ma looked at me like I was daft. She shook her head and said, "'Lijah, 'Lijah, 'Lijah, what am I going to do about you? How many times I got to tell you? A coward die 1,000 deaths. A brave boy don't die but once." I didn't say nothing, but I couldn't help wondering how that's supposed to be comforting. Seems to me, after you die the first time, the ones that follow ain't going to really matter too much. I said, "But Ma, I ain't looking to die even one time, especially not from no hoop snake bite. It's better to get your head blowed off." Ma knelt down next to me, grabbed both my shoulders, and looked hard in my eyes. "'Lijah Freeman, you listen, and you listen good. Ain't nothing in the world worth being that afeard of, son. Nothing." I said, "What about toady frogs? How come you're so afeard of them? How's that any different?" Ma couldn't hardly tolerate even hearing the word toady frog. She'd near die if she ran up on one. But just like that the conversation was over. Ma stood up, smacked the back of my head, opened the door, then said, "They is different. Them things is knowed to pass on warts and all other sorts of nasty diseases. And don't be back-talking me neither, 'Lijah Freeman. I ain't so scared of toady frogs that I'm a-running down the road in the middle of the day screaming my head off like you just done." She knelt back next to me. "Acting that way don't look good on no child old as you, 'Lijah. You got to learn to get control of yourself and quit being so fragile, sweetheart." Ma started acting like she couldn't decide if she was going to be nice to me or give me a good swatting. She ran her hand along my cheek and said in a kind way, "I don't know what I'm going to do about that Zachariah. I done asked you over and over not to have no dealings with him, Elijah. He need to be ashamed of hisself, scaring young folk with them nonsense stories." She was still acting friendly and peaceable when she said, "And you poor thing, you got to start thinking things through. You got to try to understand if what folks are telling you make any kind of sense." And chapter 2 is titled, "To Frederick Douglass." Thank you for spending some time with me. I hope you have a great afternoon, and join us again. Bye.